This episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to She.Confidential podcast. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and today I am chatting with the amazing, fabulous, great energy Claire Soares. She is the founder and CEO of a luxury tour company, Up in the Air Life. She's also the creator of the Self-Funded CEO coaching program, and she's the co-founder of Scaling Up, a transformational retreat for leaders. And today we're going to talk about why and how you can incorporate luxury and self-care in your day-to-day life. So Claire, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And where in the world are you right now? Because you're a globetrotter, so where are you today?
Well, I am actually home at one of my homes in Mexico. I live about an hour from Cancun in a small beach town called Playa del Carmen. My second home is in Lorton, Virginia. Is where I have my first property there, but I spend most of my time in Playa del Carmen.
I know your photos look amazing. I'm always so jealous.
Thank
All
you.
the fresh juice and fruits and just the water and everything. Oh, just looks so relaxing. What inspired you to make the move from Virginia to Mexico to live on the beach full time?
Yeah, so I think I have a very common story to a lot of Black women that are in corporate America. You know, I was in corporate for decades, and my last job, I was there close to 13 years, and I worked in sales for a Fortune 500 software company. I literally kept hitting like this glass ceiling and plateauing, not being able to move up in the ranks. And I saw my peers, the Beckys and the Bobs, who were able to get promoted over me, came in after me, and it was just like, every time I was told I had to do this, I had to do that. There was always a reason that I couldn't go into the next level up. And I just got to a point where I just decided that I was going to exit. Some things had occurred and I just felt very much slighted. And that's when I quit. And before I quit, though, I planned that I was going to leave in 6 months. So for 6 months, I was very strategic with saving and just making sure that I had about a ramp period of 18 months. And what a ramp is I had enough money saved to pay for housing and cash in Mexico, which is like 1/4 what I was paying when I left the US. I had moved to Oakland, California 18 months before I moved to Mexico. So I was living in Oakland. And I remember my rent in Oakland went from like $3,500 to $4,000. It went up like almost $500 a month. So when I left Oakland, my expenses got cut like into 1/4 of what I was paying there in Mexico. So it made it way for the same type of lifestyle. 4 blocks from the beach, now, 24/7 secure. I live in a condo hotel. So I think we don't realize when we're in corporate, we're in the grind, that we don't realize there's other options because we don't have other people that are living that life or even have access to that information. So I have friends that was living in this small town that invited me down. And it was literally on a weekend that I was really depressed that I was down there with him. And I met other beautiful Black women. And I saw Black women that had children, that were married, that were single, that were entrepreneurs, that were doing every possibility in life I could think of. And when I saw them, I saw myself. And that's what literally empowered me to take the leap. And I basically signed on for a 6-month lease here, and I haven't looked back since.
That is so brave and bold, and so incredible. Logistically, how challenging was that, though? Just to maintain, because you mentioned, I know you still have your other home in Virginia. Logistically, how does that work in terms of managing both properties when you're traveling between Virginia and Mexico, and with all of your international travel that you do?
Yeah, so logistically, there's nothing for me to manage in the other property. There's actually a property management company. I can give you a link later that I use. And they manage the entire property for me. They essentially are a management company that lists that property on like 5 different websites. And so the house now has like 90+% occupancy. I make way more money now. I actually make money on it now. I didn't make any money really when I had renters there. So it's phenomenal because if you take something you've purchased in the States and you're able to convert it to like a rental Airbnb type property, they manage the cleaning, the communication. So I don't do anything other than collect the checks. So I think like it's a revenue path that a lot of people think is hard and difficult, but I'll give a link after this. the company that I use, and I don't have to do anything. I don't talk to anyone, and it really has provided a great source of income. So it's funny because before COVID, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with that condo. And because of COVID, it just allowed me to have more options with the banks and the flexibilities that they added, which allowed me now to set it up into something that's actually making money.
See, and that's what I love so much and find so inspiring about you and your story because you seem to always find the best way to pivot. It's just, I watched even, and so like for the audience, like I've gone on several trips with Up in the Air Life, like premium, amazing luxury travel. Like Claire really comes through in the clutch. I remember in Egypt, I bought too much stuff. I didn't have enough room in my luggage, and so I sent out a message in the app like, "Help!" You're like, "I've got a bag," and brought the bag over to me and truly saved the day. I've watched how you all have managed, even in the last year with no travel, just keeping us educated. Like I've truly, and because I know that you care and you're passionate about not just about the travelers, but about the countries, the places that you go to. Like you really believe in ethical travel. And so I've looked to you all and I've shared articles and things. I'm like, okay, well, Up in the Air Life is saying this, y'all. So I appreciate you and your team for doing that. So where did you figure out how to be able to pivot so wonderfully, even in the midst of COVID and just everything else?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, the honest answer is I personally burned through a lot of my personal savings to keep everything afloat. So between that and business profits and really using my team strategically. So one thing that we did do is that I did not lay off a single person because of COVID. We had a very small shop before. And what we did was the team used that time and we learned new skills. We really focused on marketing. We really focused on learning technology. And the reason why we've been able to have such a successful launch, like we're having our best financial year ever, is because during COVID, we did training. We talked to each other. We took a lot of time to get to know each other. I would have meditations. We would do all type of crazy stuff during working hours. And I really invested in my team because they're the lifeline and the lifeblood of what's to come. But also, quite frankly, I used a lot of my personal money to keep things afloat because I didn't want the people that trusted me to work for me to not have a job. And so, and it's really one of those hard conversations for people when they start a business. And I tell people when they want to go out for this type of loan and that type of loan, it's all great and fine and dandy, but ultimately, like, I do feel like you need your own money. Like, I've always worked a Fortune 500 job. I've always had money on my own. So I have my own money that I've been using to invest in my company. And so when we were having trouble, I loaned my business money, which is extremely risky, not something I advise because you could lose a lot of your money. And so because of that, we were able to not only thrive and sustain, hiring the right people so that you're investing back in. Like we have a full-time marketing manager now. And if you've watched our Instagram, our emails, our documents, you can see it's like, we've totally leveled up, and we couldn't have done that without her, without our new content manager, without our new operations manager. Once we did our first private launch to existing clients in March, we tripled our team strategically we basically doubled up to focus on having an even larger launch. So now we're almost sold out of 2022. So there's just a lot of business acumen, quite frankly. You know, I've spent most of my career in sales and leadership. And some of it has just been being able to be bold, following your gut. Because while my friends were laying off people, they're like, you just hire people? And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, wait a minute, you guys are working full time now? What are y'all working on? I'm like, we're working on webinars. We're working on funnels. Because now is the time everyone's booking. If you're not ready, if you don't have trips ready, you're missing out. People are booking, they're ready to travel, they're excited. And so I think the challenge with entrepreneurship is knowing when you should double down and also having financially the money to kind of hold out. Kind of like playing poker. You know, when you're playing poker, you don't got that hand, but you got that poker face and you're going in, you're putting more money in on it. And so you got to know how to play poker. And sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. But ultimately, like if I didn't have my own money, I probably would have been in trouble, but I had my own money beforehand. So now it's paying off. It's paying dividends, but it's a really rough road. It was a very awful year. I mean, we lost a lot of money last year. We'll end up having like 17 months of no trips, and we've already made all that money back, but there's still work to do. There's still money you can't recoup from, you know, COVID has hit the travel industry so bad. Like, no one really gave refunds on the vendor side, especially when you're talking about group trips that could be worth 20,000 to like $250,000. People aren't giving refunds because they've already started paying
Right.
vendors, right? So for us, the challenge was explaining that to customers, where you have a large amount that understand. Then you have a small subset that doesn't understand. So being able to continuously talk to them. And these are trips that have been postponed 2 years for some trips. And so it's been extremely difficult for the team mentally to have to explain to that. For me, I mean, I think I cried every day for like almost 45 days at first, because it was just a feeling that I felt like I didn't get into business for people to yell at me. And I'm not trying to take anyone's money, but like when you have vendors that won't give you money back, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, that's the reality.
And some people are like yelling at you, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, like you want to respect people, but then it's like you're taking on so much negative, at a certain point, and even if it's just one or two people, what I explain to someone, having to have 3 people yell at you is awful. Like, nobody signs up for that. I didn't sign up for that. That's not.
No, and I heard that from a lot of my friends who were in service-based industries last year, even from everything from weddings, to people booking, birthday party venues. It was the word for last year for me was grace, really just
Yeah.
learning the importance of extending grace to other people, because COVID, that was beyond anyone's forecasting or control. And a lot of people lost a lot of things monetarily, emotionally. And so I really, I was praying and thinking
Hmm.
about everyone who's in the workspace
Yeah.
industry, because it was hard. And as you noted, it's still, people are out and traveling now, but I don't know that businesses would ever recover everything that they lost.
It's the one thing I explain to my clients is that the challenge we have now as we move forward is that things aren't going to be the same, from being able to sit larger groups at tables will be split up. Some hotels are still not open. Like, our hotel in Cape Town is indefinitely closed. They're still not
Oh,
open. They're not going to be open for our trip this year, so we're changing hotels. There's small vendors that won't be open. So I know it's almost like, people say, oh, you shouldn't travel now, it's irresponsible. I disagree. I think that, not even I think, the people that work in the travel industry in these towns, they want you to come responsibly. Because if you choose not to come until when COVID is over, which I don't think COVID will ever be over anytime soon, they're not going to have jobs. Like, it's just going to be dead. I mean, there's whole towns that depend on it. I think now there are protocols we can take. There are vaccinations for Americans we can take. I think travel needs to move on. That's what we do, how we grow and learn, and just need to do it responsibly and differently.
Where are good resources outside of Up in the Air Life? So for the audience, if you aren't in the Up in the Air Life, following their social
Mm-hmm.
media or on their Facebook group, because that's where I found like the most articles and the conversations, which can be really hilarious. But those have been really helpful for me in just knowing what's happening in other parts of the world, what other, seasons, because I've seen there are some people who've been traveling throughout the pandemic, and they would say,
Yeah.
this is what I'm observing, this is what I'm doing. I saw your mask, I saw other people's masks, and I was like, okay, these are some ideas, and that made me feel safer, even though I haven't gone any place at this point. It's made me
Mm-hmm.
feel safer and helped me prepare for when I do start resuming travel. So what are some places that you recommend that are credible for people to go to find out how they can travel responsibly during these times?
I think Condé Nast is a great place. I also think Travel Leisure, Travel Noir,
Yeah.
obviously. Those are all great places to read articles. But honestly, I feel like the best place is to find someone who's actually been to that destination within a few months. I think one of the challenging issues right now when it comes to travel is you get a lot of misinformation. You see articles that say, oh my gosh, like Mexico is this. Okay, Mexico is a whole country. Let's slow it down and let's talk about regionally where you're going first. Compare that region statistics to where you're from to understand if I leave my house in Chicago and I go to Quintana Roo, which is the Cancun, Tulum area, what is the infection rate of COVID compared to where I am? So I think that you also need to use some of your own information and your own checkpoints. I think those articles a lot of time are not spreading the most accurate information. Can't talk about, when people talk about Africa, that's a whole continent. That's another kind of ignorant thing. Yeah. Africa is bigger than the whole world put together. So in general. So I think we have to talk more specifics, and I think we should ask more questions. I think if you're just going to be scared to travel, it's okay. Be scared. Just wait until you feel comfortable. But I can tell you I've been to some places and I thought it was very safe with precautions, and I'm vaccinated as well. So I also have a layer of I feel safe. Yeah. So I think I would advise anyone looking to travel internationally to consider being vaccinated, talk to your doctor and ask questions. And if you're not going to get vaccinated, you absolutely should buy COVAX insurance. That is insurance that will medevac you home on a private jet if you test positive, because otherwise, unfortunately now, if you test positive while you're abroad, you have to stay in that country for 10 days. And I don't know about you, but I would not want to be in any country for 10 days while I had COVID. I would definitely want to be, either back in Mexico where I live or back in the United States.
And you mentioned the COVAX insurance. So just to clarify for the audience, because I talk to people so much about travel insurance, and it was the first trip I took was up in the air life when I went to Egypt, which was like one of the best adventures of my life. You all did such a fantastic job just educating us about what to pack, what to bring, but then the importance of insurance. And prior to that, I had really only thought about travel insurance for the purposes of if I need to cancel my trip because I can't go for some reason, not thinking about the medical aspects of it, like what if I'm injured or anything, and even something like food poisoning. So I really appreciated that. So is it for people who are watching or listening? Is it the same thing if they buy travel insurance? Will that cover them if they get sick with COVID, or do they need to look for COVID specific policies?
Good question. So a regular travel insurance policy in general, that is only going to cover you after the fact if you get sick in the destination. So they have medical insurance that's included in your policy. So if you got sick, typically they'll cover $100 per day in the destination after the fact. So if you test positive, in the unlikely event that you test positive, you have to stay in that country for 10 additional days. And then you're able to come back in the U.S. That's a U.S. rule, right? Yeah. So you're going to have to get a hotel, and you may have hospital expenses if you are truly sick. And so for most insurances, they'll cover like the lodging because it's considered trip interruption, that under doctor's orders, you have to stay in that country. So your insurance would reimburse you up to $100 a day, depending on your policy, for those 10 days of lodging, right?
Okay.
But we all know, like, if we're in places like Turks and Caicos, where it's like $300 to $500 a day, that could be a lot of money.
Yes.
What COVAX insurance does, that's separate. COVAX insurance allows you to hop on a private jet, being COVID positive, with a known ailment of COVID. You're showing some type of symptom. They will privately medevac you back to the U.S. So you cannot get on a commercial plane if you test positive for COVID. But if you have COVAX insurance, you can actually get on a private jet that they will set up being positive and get back home. We highly recommend it, especially if you're not vaccinated, just because you just don't know. Right. No one knows how their body's going to be affected by COVID. Obviously, there, are things that we all should do to keep our immunity up. But these are all the things that each person has to consider. And we all have our different risk levels when it comes to traveling abroad.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I've preached to folks about insurance, and it's more important than ever right now. So thank you for including that information, because travelers, you need to know, get your insurance. So I know so many people who would do it and just say, I'm just going to pray that nothing happens. And with COVID, the risk of it.
Listen, broke my leg on a trip to Zambia in 2019. So when you talk about travel insurance, I am sure that I acquired thousands and thousands and $1,000 of medical expenses, but because I had insurance, it kicked in and they took care of a private hospital, and I was hospitalized and had surgery over 3 weeks. So I would never think in a million years I would break my leg in Zambia whitewater rafting, but it really happened. And I really needed insurance. And if not, I would have depleted a lot of money to pay for an emergency surgery, which, by the way, has to be cash or credit.
That's the other thing a lot of people don't realize. When you're in other countries, there's no bill me later.
No, there's no bill me. No one's taking your insurance card. It's pay up front. Talk to your insurance people later.
Yes, yes, yes. I had forgotten to mention that. So thank you for mentioning that. That is very important for people to know.
Hmm.
Uh, in addition to your travel,
Hmm.
like you have a very luxurious self-care regimen. Like I see all your amazing fresh juices and you what I love is that you invest in self-care and you invest in support. We were talking earlier about your team and how you expanded to your team. And I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think because we aren't necessarily taught how to invest in our businesses properly. You know, we think about scaling and growing it, but we don't think about that team. And as your business grows and prospers, you need to expand that team as well. And not just professionally, but in your personal life as well, which is something we as women, especially Black women, we really struggle with that because we go crazy trying to do everything. So, can you talk a little bit about how you balance uh, basically 3 companies and multiple residences and taking care of yourself and your beautiful fur baby?
Self care to me is something that's scheduled, first of all. So I have weekly acupuncture, I have weekly 2 hour massages. I also have a full time house manager that helps keep me in line as far as keeps with the house clean. She also helps with healthy eating. So, like, I have fresh green juice that's made for me every day. I have fresh ginger tea that's always in the fridge. I have fresh guacamole, pico de gallo. And like right now, I also invest in the people that help me. So right now, she's at my house now being trained by a professional chef. So she's learning like proper techniques of cutting. She's learning techniques on all the different foods, how to cook a proper steak and shrimp and soup. And yesterday we made fried chicken and chicken stock. And so the way that you take care of yourself is you get people to help you and you also help them help you. So I'm helping her more cooking. I taught her how to organize with YouTube videos, and now she keeps my house organized. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about, like what do you have time for in the day, and the things you don't have time for to have people help you with it. I definitely feel like I can speak for myself, but I feel like it's something that I see common with Black women and Black people in general. We're not taught to get help. Like it's really often looked down that you have someone clean your house. And so it's something that you have to learn, and it's something that I think you have to lean into, like making time for yourself. Like I have certain times during the pandemic on Wednesdays I wouldn't work. Wednesday was my think day. I just went to the beach in the pool and I literally just chilled, like really light on the cell phone and just relax. And someone said, "Well, what does that mean?" I'm working, but I'm literally hearing myself think. So I think one thing, people are on social media oftentimes too much. There's too many inputs. A really good friend of mine told me, just reminded me that I needed to have less inputs. And I listened to her, so I kind of cut out a lot of the inputs. I used to listen to podcasts in the morning. I stopped that. Now in the morning, I don't listen to anything. So I think really planning time to yourself, planning time to think, planning time for your facials, your nails, keeping yourself up as a woman, like that is really important. You've no idea how mentally it affects you, right? If you don't look your best. If you work all day, you get off, you look like crap because you didn't do your hair or whatever, it does affect you.
Mm-hmm.
You feel a certain way. And quite honestly, and I talk about this all the time, if you're not paying yourself in your business something, if you're not paying yourself, if you're not giving yourself time, you are going to resent your company. You're going to resent your life. Even though you don't work for someone, you are working for someone, yourself. But you'll start to have resentment because you don't have anything and your love tank is empty. Your energy is empty. So I think it's important to just really lean in. I think meditation is important. I start my day bookend in the beginning and the end with meditation. I also have therapy once a month minimum. And therapy in our community is just something like I've had someone say, why do you go to therapy? And I'm like, how can you not? Like, how can you not go to therapy? I think therapy is something that will enrich your life. Every relationship with from your friends to your boyfriends to the people who work for you will benefit from you being able to hear people, to be able to be a better person who can listen and objectively hear people. You know, therapy teaches you how to sympathize with people, how to understand and sympathize and empathize, and just really hear where they're coming from, which I think before therapy I wasn't hearing. Like, I hear it, but then I'm just go back to about me, right?
Yeah.
Instead of understanding, like, how does this person feel, whether it's someone that works for you, whether it's someone you're in love with, whether it's a friend, and really just being clear on making time. Like, for me, I like to make time with my friends individually. I don't really care to have a lot of friends over. Sometimes I do, but I do like to have little dates with all my girlfriends separately. In addition to, like, one day a week, I like to invite everybody over. So
Yeah.
I think the biggest part of my growth, quite honestly, has been breaking away from social media and actually living my life and actually stopping to care what people think and actually having better relationships with my friends.
And I love how intentional you are
Mm-hmm.
about doing all of that. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was venting because his girlfriend said, "Well, we need to schedule date night, and maybe we should also schedule when we're intimate." And he said, "Charlene, have you ever heard of this?" And he's just like lamenting all of this. And I said, "Well, you know what? We're all busy. They both have multiple obligations and responsibilities. They both have children for previous marriages." And I said, "You know what? You have a lot pulling at you. She has a lot pulling at her. If you want to make each other a priority, sometimes you have to schedule it. We schedule everything else that's important. We're intentional about everything else that's important, except for a lot of times our self-care and our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wonder why those are the areas that we're not flourishing in. Like, that's what she's saying. You were so important to me. This relationship is so important to me that I want to make sure that we're carving out room and time for it. And he's like,
Exactly.
ah, okay. I didn't see it like that, but I like to be more spontaneous. I'm like, well, that's a separate subject. But again, it's
No,
like,
it's true. You have to be intentional and you have to
yeah,
make time for people. And then
yeah,
also, like, when it comes to relationships, understanding their love language. Everyone has a love language. People who work for you have a love language on how they feel recognized, how they
mm-hmm,
feel seen at work. It's the same whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship, and understanding what that person needs and being able to acknowledge them and affirm them in some way.
yeah. It's so important that intention in prioritizing, and that's how we have this balance.
Hmm.
And so you recently launched Scaling Up, which I love because when I was reading the description about it, I was like, oh wow, it sounds like she's going to teach everybody how to be fabulous like her, how this balance and be intentional. So
Hmm.
I know that's something that you launched recently. So would you like to talk a little bit about that, who it's for, and where can people
Yeah.
find information?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Scaling Up is basically a retreat program that has the foundation of my standard coaching program. And I co founded that with Sheila Kay, who was one of my first coaches the first 18 months of Up in the Air Life. And I also would consult with her intermittently. And so we decided we wanted to create something for the different leaders to show them, like, how do you take your business from one step to the next step and level up. So in order to scale, we basically go through like mindset, we go through monetization, we also go through sales funnels, which is very critical on handling your business, how to basically capture more leads, how to process your leads, convert clients, and really also making sure they understand as leaders the systems they need to have in place. These are all things that Sheila has done and I've done. I feel like Up in the Air Life is in our like version 3 as far as our website and our automation and our rich content that we provide. And so I am here for it all to help people. The retreat is for people, whether they're newbies, in the middle, or more advanced. It's a very intimate retreat that really lets them sink in and get clearer on what they're doing. Because ultimately, you got to get clear on your monetization strategy. I think that's a big thing. People just start running, and doing. but going back to, okay, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What are the revenue goals? What's tied to those fundamental things? And then aligning all of my marketing, my operations, and then also my personal goals with that, and having some sort of harmony. I like to say harmony because I just don't think it's never a balance. Like, I was up last night working, I was off part of the day because I had a death in the family, and like, it's all over the place with how things are going to be put together, but it is in harmony that it comes out.
Yes. And that's so important. It really is. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before you provide the audience with information on where they can find you and follow your various brands and platforms?
So the last thing I would leave people with is 3 words. It's do, be, live. I believe in doing what you want to do now, being who you are in this moment. So you don't have to wait until this happens. Just be that person and then live the life that you want now. Because ultimately, life is tremendously short sometimes. And I just think, like, a lot of times we delay putting off what we can do today until another day in the future. And I just think, get clear on who you are so you can be happy now. Happiness is so underrated. Achieve it now.
It is. Yes. Yes. You deserve to be happy now. You can
Mm-hmm.
be happy now. Yeah. So, where can people follow you, find you, and learn more about Up in the Air Life and Scaling Up and your coaching
The
programs?
easiest way, you can find me on Instagram at Claire B. Soares, CLAIRE B as in boy, Soares, SOARES. And you can learn more about Up in the Air Life by just hitting us up on the web at www.upintheairlife.com.
And I will have the links for Claire and Up in the Air Life in the description box for the podcast and on the YouTube channel and on SheConfidential.com on the episode page link. So thank you so much, Claire. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you, and I cannot wait to travel with
Yes.
y'all again. So before we wrap up, so I have to ask, so like, what has been your most anticipated, exciting new trip for the next year? Like, what's one of your favorites? I know it's hard. It's like these are all your children, but which one's like
My
some of
favorite
your
trip is
faves?
definitely between South Africa, the Champagne trip, in Portugal. But the most exciting thing for me now is having a baby in the next year. Like, that's the most exciting thing for me right now.
I know. I'm so excited for
So,
you. Oh my
working on
goodness.
it. Working
Yeah.
on it. So,
Yes. Yes. We will all be praying and sending lots of great positive energy your way. So
thank
I
you.
am so excited for all the future holds for you. You truly are just a good person. So I'm really excited for you and appreciate you. So
Thank you so much for having me.
thank you. So thank you, audience, for watching, listening to She Confidential. I'm Charlene Ketchum. Until next time.